We're looking at the Etruscans now. These folks were contemporaries of the Greeks, but they do develop a very unique style of their own. They are the original inhabitants of the Italian peninsula, and they're located primarily in the northern region of that peninsula. It's a region we refer to today as Tuscany, so it's actually named for the Etruscans. They are a people who were pretty wealthy because they had mineral resources which they were able to trade. And in exchange, they often, particularly in trade with the Greeks, were able to acquire pottery and other Greek objects, along with the stories and the teachings of the ancient Greeks. So we're going to see a lot of reference in Etruscan art to the stories that are also found in Homer. The temples of the Etruscans do not survive because they were constructed out of perishable materials, in contrast to the way the Greeks built with marble, which does have a pretty substantial staying power. You do have a model in your textbook so you can get an idea of what these temples originally look like. And they are important because they're going to influence the Romans. The remains that we do have from the Etruscans comes mostly from the burials of their dead. And the Etruscans, in fact, do create cities for the dead, or necropolises, that are intended to resemble the world of the living. The Etruscans are the original inhabitants of the Italian peninsula. That means they were there before the Romans. And the Etruscans are going to make many contributions to Rome. I guess, unfortunately for the Etruscans, the Romans come along and historically overshadow the Etruscans, partly because of the monumental remains. Think of the Colosseum in Rome, for example. Think of the gigantic triumphal arches. All of the monuments that the Romans leave throughout their empire has caused us to literally forget about the Etruscans. Nevertheless, they do deserve credit, and they contributed significantly to the creation of Roman ideas in the Roman world. Okay, this is a little bit of a sampling of what it is the Etruscans actually contributed to Rome. A complex road system. When we get to Rome, I'll be talking about the road system, which links the Roman world together. It's one of the most amazing in the ancient world. The Etruscans also come up with gladiatorial contests. And of course, that's one of the things we think of when we think of the ancient Romans. Even perhaps more insulting than that, the Etruscans invent the quote-unquote Roman arch, which is also something that is stylistically related to Roman creations and one of the diagnostic features of Roman style that I'm going to be referring to shortly. The Etruscans also passed the Latin alphabet to the Romans. The Etruscans themselves did borrow this from the Greeks, who got it from the Phoenicians, so there's a long chain here in terms of the origination of the alphabet, but the Romans only get it because the Etruscans had it. This all takes place because of trade with the Greeks, which will allow the Etruscans to acquire the Greek myths and the stories of Homer, which they are going to be able to pass on to the Romans. In addition to all of this, the Etruscans are responsible for founding many of the cities that we associate with the country of Italy today, important cities that we often first think of as Roman. Included among them is Rome itself, then Orvieto, Bologna, Pompeii, and there are others, but certainly Pompeii we always think of as a Roman city. That's the city we'll discuss later that was buried with the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. But in fact, it was founded by the Etruscans. The Etruscans also will pass on bronze making to the Romans, and there's a tendency on the Italian peninsula to favor bronze public sculpture over the use of marble, which was something that the Greeks, generally speaking, tended to favor. In the marvelous creations that the Etruscans make, there are two terms that you should know for describing the style of the Etruscans. Those two terms are surface pattern and animation, and these qualities do help to distinguish Etruscan art from the art of the Greeks and the Romans. This work is a pretty good example of both surface pattern and animation. By surface pattern, I'm talking about a series of repeated shapes or forms that sit on the surface of an object. And in this case, our creature, which is a chimera, has a lot of visible surface pattern, particularly if we go over here around the ruff. You could think of it as an animal mane, but it also runs down the back of our animal. And in addition to that, we have repeated imagery showing the ribs of our rather stressed and vibrant creature up on the screen. So the Etruscans are taking every opportunity to embellish their creation with surface pattern. The beast also is in a pose suggesting it's about to pounce or attack. There's a great deal of energy and power and force in this creature, and I think it qualifies as animation. This is figure 612 in our textbook. It's the Chimera of Arezzo, which is one of the Etruscan cities. And all of these cities, by the way, were fortified cities on hilltops. Because they were independent, the Etruscans shared a culture, but each of the city-states was independent. It became relatively easy for the Romans to conquer the Etruscans by simply taking one city-state at a time, gradually assimilating the Etruscan city-states into the ever-growing Roman world. And as they did that, borrowing even more of the ideas and elements of style of the ancient Etruscans. This particular object is important partly because it's one of the best Etruscan pieces that we have, but also it helps to document the borrowing that the Etruscans do from the Greek world. This is a Greek myth, and it does record the story of a hero. We do not have the remains. Some art historians suggest that this is a part of a group, and our great hero and his great horse would have been created life-size as a part of this, and that may be true. What we are left with, however, is the beastie, the chimera. And this is a fire-breathing monster. It will be slayed by a great Greek hero riding the pretty famous, you've probably heard of Pegasus, the famous heroic horse, the winged horse that's part of Greek mythology. Zeus is going to transfer this creature, Pegasus, into a constellation. So those of you who know the skies, this is the origin for the name of that constellation. The monster itself is a supernatural because it's a composite. It's made out of at least 3 life forms. One of them is lion, that's the body. Another is serpent, and that's the tail. And the third is goat. And we'll get a closer look at the goat head later on, but it comes out right here, projecting essentially from the side of the body of the lion. This really scary creature was ravaging the countryside, and it will be slain by a great Greek hero whose name is Bellerophon. He is going to essentially save the day, slaying the monster and bringing order and balance back to the Greek world. The image that we're looking at is the creature rearing back after it's been injured, as if to continue its assault against the great Greek hero. What that does is to turn it into a worthy adversary for the hero. This was found in the 16th century in its city-state, and we think that it was buried as an offering. And it is because it was buried that we actually still have the bronze piece. Let's look at the details. Okay, here we come. As you take a look at the face of our chimera, you can see the whiskers on the snout of our beastie. If you go over here, these are repeated, simplified lines running across the surface, giving us lots and lots of pattern. The ruff, which appears in rows of kind of triangular projections with lines running through them, also gives us a great sense of the repetition of pattern. That gives a kind of rhythmic appearance to the surface of our creation. These are details. On the left, you can see the head of the goat, and you can also see the injury right here as blood spurts out of the neck. We actually have a beastie that is in the process of dying, but at the same time has not given up. The whole piece, as I suggested, is filled with animation that is typical of the Etruscans, energy, power, and the beastie is about to lurch forward to again assault the Greek hero. We have positive evidence that this is an Etruscan piece because it carries an Etruscan inscription on the leg of our chimera right down here. That inscription indicates a dedication to the god Tinia. In other words, this piece was actually crafted for the purpose of going probably into a sanctuary, later being buried, and it is that burial that protected it for us. Tinia was the Etruscan sky god, and probably he's pretty much the same as the Greek god Zeus, also known by the Romans as Jupiter, a superior supreme being associated probably originally with weather, but certainly with the sky, indicating a shared mythology by all of the people in this particular region, in Greece as well as in the Italian peninsula.